Today we bring together two towering figures whose visions of life could not be more different. On one side, Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor who taught that virtue, self-control, and acceptance of fate are the path to peace and strength. On the other, Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher of the will to power, challenged us to overcome ourselves, reject complacency, and create our own values. Together they will face a single question: is the highest life found in enduring, with virtue, or rising through will? What follows is a meeting of minds across the centuries, each speaking from their true beliefs.
When I speak of virtue, I speak of the only thing that is truly ours. Wealth can be taken, health can fail, reputation can be ruined. But the choice to act with justice, with wisdom, with courage, and with self-control remains ours until our final breath. Life is a river whose current we cannot master, but we can steer our vessel with integrity. To endure is not weakness. It is the greatest form of strength, for it is mastery over the one thing we truly command, our own soul. Many imagine that to live greatly is to bend the world to their will. Yet the world is not clay for our shaping. It is the fire that tempers us. The storms of fate will come regardless. The question is not how to avoid them, but how to remain upright when they arrive.
I have heard much of your talk of endurance, Marcus, and to me it tastes of resignation. To endure is to accept a life defined by the strength of others. The will to power is the will to shape, to create, to command your own destiny rather than letting the river carry you wherever it pleases. You call the world a fire that tempers us. I call it a battlefield where only those who dare to impose themselves leave a mark. Virtue, as you define it, is merely obedience dressed in noble words. It keeps people tame. It teaches them to take pride in their chains. I say, break them. Rise above the common morality, and do not simply endure the storms, but command them, redirect them, and turn them into your own wind.
Nietzsche, what you call resignation, I call freedom from slavery to desire and ambition. The man who needs to command the storms is still a slave to the idea that without power over the world, he is nothing. Yet a man can lose everything and still be whole if his soul is untouched. The tyrant who bends others to his will may believe himself powerful, but he trembles when fortune turns against him. I have seen emperors fall because they sought to control what was never theirs to control. Strength is not measured by how many bend to your command, but by how unshaken you remain when no one obeys you. To accept fate is not to bow in weakness, but to stand with unbreakable resolve before it.
You speak of the soul as if it were untouched by life, but the soul is forged in the acts it takes. It is not some quiet candle protected from the wind. It is a flame that grows brighter the more it consumes. To live only within the limits of virtue is to starve that flame. We must seek, strive, and even risk ourselves for greatness. Suffering does not simply shape us through endurance. It should drive us to act, to become more than we are. Fate, as you call it, is not a master to serve. It is a challenge to conquer. The man who shapes the world to his vision leaves behind more than an untroubled heart. He leaves behind a higher standard of life itself.
The first exchange has drawn their battle lines clearly. Marcus Aurelius stands for the calm strength of the inner citadel, the soul unshaken by the storms of life. Friedrich Nietzsche calls for the boldness to seize the world and shape it in one's image, refusing quiet acceptance. They turn to the deeper question beneath their disagreement. Is suffering something to be endured, or something to be used as fuel for transformation?
Suffering is the common fate of all who live. It spares no man, no matter his wealth, strength, or ambition. The great error is to imagine that suffering is an enemy to be conquered. Suffering is a teacher. It strips away illusions. It reveals to us the fragility of the body and the impermanence of all things. When a man accepts this, He stops chasing the impossible dream of controlling fortune and instead begins to govern himself. This is why the Stoics speak of the inner citadel, a fortress within that no siege can breach. To respond to pain with anger, to loss with vengeance, to humiliation with the lust to dominate, is to be a servant of those very events. But if I can meet pain with composure, if I can remain just when wronged, I have already mastered what matters most. The world will pass, empires will crumble, and my name will be forgotten. Yet I will have lived as nature intended, a rational soul in harmony with itself.
I will not bow to this harmony you speak of, Marcus, for it sounds to me like a lullaby meant to keep men asleep. You say, suffering teaches us. Yes, it teaches, but only if we take it into our hands and make it serve our creation. Suffering is not a school to make us calm. It is the raw material from which the Great Spirit forges itself. The man who endures without transforming himself is like a blacksmith who stares at the iron but never shapes it. You warn against responding to pain with the will to dominate. I say there is no shame in domination if it is the path to bringing something higher into the world. Those who endure quietly may survive, but they leave nothing behind. They are the dust of history, not its authors. I would rather suffer greatly and rise to create something magnificent than accept the quiet dignity of a life that changes nothing.
History's authors, as you call them, are often men whose names are remembered for their cruelty, their pride, and their injustice. They were consumed by the desire to leave their mark, and in their pursuit they burned not only themselves but countless others. You speak of forging something great from suffering. I do not deny that action can emerge from hardship, but the question is what kind of action. The Stoic does not deny the call to act, but he acts in accordance with reason, justice, and the common good, not in obedience to a restless hunger for greatness. You say those who endure quietly change nothing. I tell you that the greatest change a man can bring to the world is to be an example of virtue in an age of corruption. This seed may not be celebrated by history, but it will live in the unseen. Influence it leaves on those who witness it. You would have men aim to become monuments. I would have them aim to become whole.
Wholeness, Marcus, is a word for completion, and completion is death. Life is movement, struggle, and the endless reaching beyond what one is. I do not celebrate cruelty for its own sake, nor do I think all who seek greatness must destroy others. But I reject the idea that the highest aim is simply to be virtuous and calm. That is the aim of the herd, content to live and die unnoticed. The man of the will to power seeks to surpass himself, to become something the world has not yet seen. If in that pursuit he stirs conflict, so be it, for conflict is the midwife of greatness. You speak of justice, yet justice is born from strength. You speak of the common good, yet the common good is raised by uncommon men. Suffering is not here to humble us into harmony, but to awaken in us the fire to ascend.
The debate now turns toward a sharper edge. Marcus Aurelius defends the inner mastery of virtue as the truest form of greatness. Friedrich Nietzsche challenges him, claiming that greatness lies not in restraint, but in the relentless drive to surpass oneself. Beneath their words is a deeper tension. What is the purpose of life itself, and does it serve the individual or something beyond them?
Life is not ours in the way you imagine, Nietzsche. It is a trust, a loan from nature, given for a brief time and to be returned. We are not separate from the whole, but parts of it, like hands of a single body. The good of the hand is bound to the good of the body, and to act as though it were separate is to injure both. This is why I hold virtue as the highest aim. To live in harmony with nature is to live with justice toward others, to act with wisdom, and to accept what is beyond our control. You see this as submission, but it is not. It is the discipline to use our strength in service of what is right rather than in pursuit of personal glory. Glory fades, empires vanish, The monuments of even the mightiest crumble into dust. But the act of living rightly, moment by moment, remains untouched by the decay of time. The man who knows this has peace, and his peace is a fortress no enemy can breach.
Peace is a fortress only to those who fear the storm. You speak of the whole, Marcus, as if we are mere instruments in some grand design. I say there is no design, only the raw chaos of existence. To imagine that life has loaned us our being is to comfort oneself with illusions. We are not servants of nature. We are its highest expression when we overcome it. The man who accepts his fate without striving to rise above it has already surrendered. Yes, glory fades and monuments crumble. But the spirit that dares to create, to command, to impose meaning upon a meaningless world, that is the spirit worth honoring. You tell men to act for the good of the whole. I tell them to become so strong, so radiant in their will, that they redefine what the whole can be. Without such spirits, life stagnates. Without the fire of ambition, humanity becomes a flock of sheep grazing in a quiet field, unaware that they are simply waiting for the slaughter.
And yet, Nietzsche, your vision risks turning the field into a battlefield without end. When men live for the fire of their own ambition, they often burn not only themselves, but all around them. The Stoic seeks not to avoid struggle, but to enter it with discipline and purpose. You speak of imposing meaning upon the world, but meaning does not come from the force of our will alone. It emerges from the alignment of our actions with the order of nature, the reason that governs all things. To act without this alignment is to act blindly, no matter how strong the will. Imagine a general who charges forward without regard for the terrain or the enemy's strength. His courage may be admirable, but it will lead to ruin. Strength without wisdom is not greatness. It is merely noise before collapse.
Wisdom, Marcus, is not found in aligning oneself with some eternal order, for I see no such order. Wisdom is forged in the act of becoming, in daring to step beyond the limits set for us by tradition, by morality, by fear. Yes, the battlefield consumes, but it is also the birthplace of the exceptional. To live safely within the limits of virtue is to live in a cage whose bars are painted gold. I say open the cage, even if the air outside is wild and the ground uncertain. It is better to live one day in the fullness of our own creation than to spend a lifetime in calm obedience to laws we did not write. Life's meaning is not given. It is seized, wrestled into existence by those willing to pay the price. And if the price is high, so much the better, for nothing of worth was ever won cheaply.
The clash is now absolute. Marcus Aurelius holds to a vision of life where peace is found in harmony with reason and virtue. Friedrich Nietzsche rejects this as a cage, urging humanity to embrace the chaos and create meaning through strength. In transformation, in this act, they confront the deepest divide between them. Is the self a servant of something greater, or the master of all it can claim?
Nietzsche, you speak as though the self were a sovereign without obligation, a fire with no hearth. But we are bound to one another by the very nature of existence. No man rises alone, no man suffers alone. If I am emperor, it is because countless lives have tilled the soil beneath my feet. To imagine the self as master of all is to forget the debt we owe to the whole. This is not a denial of strength, but its proper use. The soldier who fights only for his own glory is a danger to his comrades. The ruler who governs for his own will alone brings ruin to his people. Power untempered by justice is not greatness, it is tyranny. And tyranny, no matter how radiant in the moment, withers quickly. A man who conquers himself, however, stands unshaken even when the world shifts beneath him.
And yet, Marcus, the very men you speak of, the soldiers, the rulers, The thinkers, those who have shaped the course of history, were not content to be mere parts of a whole. They became something more precisely because they placed their vision above the quiet safety of duty. You warn of tyranny, but I see a greater danger in the slow suffocation of mediocrity. A life lived entirely in service to the whole risks becoming a life that adds nothing to it. You say power must be tempered by justice. I say justice itself must be redefined by those strong enough to lift humanity beyond its current state. Without such creators, we remain locked in the same cycles, repeating the same virtues, never daring to ask if they can be surpassed. The highest self is not a servant. It is a creator, even if the creation disturbs the peace of the many.
But creation without restraint becomes destruction. The Stoic does not oppose ambition, but seeks to anchor it so that it builds rather than consumes. You speak of surpassing virtue as though virtue were a chain. Yet virtue is the architect's plan that ensures the building will stand. Remove it, and your grandest structures will collapse into ruin. The desire to lift humanity cannot come from the raw hunger for power alone, for such hunger is blind to all but itself. You would have men rise, but to rise without harmony with. Nature's order is to climb a ladder that leans upon nothing. You may reach the top, but the fall will be swift and final.
Then let the fall come, if it must. I would rather fall from reaching too high than stand forever on safe ground, gazing at the stars, but never touching them. Humanity advances because of those who risk themselves for visions others call dangerous. The Stoic may keep his fortress, his calm, his harmony, but the world is moved by those willing to shatter the old walls and build anew, even if their work is never finished. Peace may preserve life, but it is the storm that drives it forward.
They have reached the summit of their argument. Marcus Aurelius defends the discipline of virtue as the foundation of any lasting greatness. Friedrich Nietzsche holds that greatness itself demands risk, struggle, and the courage to break from what is given. Now they offer their final thoughts, not to persuade each other, but to speak directly to us, to all who must choose how to live.
If I could leave one thought with those who listen, it is this: life is brief, and its course is beyond our command. We cannot choose the length of our days, but we can choose the quality of our actions. The storms will come. The years will take all that we cling to. But the choice to act with justice, to treat others with fairness, to govern our desires, remains always in our hands. This is true power, not the power to rule over others, but the power to rule oneself. If every man sought first to master his own soul, there would be no need for empires to command him. Live with virtue, and you will have built something that no fate can tear down.
And if I could leave my own final word, it would be this: do not fear the storms. Seek them. They are the proving ground of the spirit. Life will offer you safety, and it will offer you comfort, and both will make you small. You must be willing to risk yourself, to test the limits of what you can be, to create meaning where none is given. The world owes you nothing, and you owe it nothing in return. But you owe yourself the chance to rise, to shape the chaos into something that bears your mark. Even if you fail, even if you fall, you will have lived as more than a shadow in the lives of others. You will have lived as your own creation.
And so, the Stoic emperor and the philosopher of the will to power leave us with a choice: to endure with calm strength, unshaken by fortune, or to rise with restless will, daring to reshape the world. Marcus Aurelius offers the peace of a fortress. Within, Friedrich Nietzsche offers the fire of the open horizon. Between them lies the question each of us must answer: is the highest life found in virtue or in the will to power?